This episode of Misery Hunters is brought to you by Paisley Craft Beer Co., Paisley's #1 and only craft beer venue. You can sit in and take away, and we've also just introduced a local delivery service. So if you live in the Renfrewshire area and are looking for craft beer, we can deliver the same day if you order before 1 o'clock. Next day delivery as well for any time after that. Minimum order is £20. Any orders over 60, you get free delivery. So what are you waiting for? Go to paisleycraftbeer.com. That's paisleycraftbeer.com.
Hello, you miserable bastards, and welcome to another Misery Hunters interview podcast. This time it's myself, Mark Jardine. I've got Sam Smith joining me.
Hello.
And our special guest this time is Kate Cooper, manager of the St Mirren's women's team. Hi, Kate.
Hello there.
Thanks for joining us. I think I'd mentioned to you already, but I was recently speaking to Keith Lasley, and it was something that he was really keen to bring up, the increased connection between the men's and women's team and trying to get the club growing in all areas. So naturally, I thought this was a good direction to go in with our next interview and get to hear directly from source how things are going.
Yeah, no, it's great to be invited along and to be able to tell people about where we are and what we're doing.
The women's team is coming up on 5 years actually since it was launched. Although I think that the first season would have been the following March, and you were involved right from the start. Is this something that you'd been looking to build?
I've been in women's football for a long time. I played football and have coached at many clubs. I'd actually taken a wee break from football, but then I'd get approached to come back in and help because St Mirren wanted to have a team. So at that time I met with Gordon, Scott and Tony Fitzpatrick, and we spoke about having the women's team in a women and girls academy. So it had been the December. So the Women's League used to run March to October. So we came in that season. So that had been December 2017. I think we started with 6 girls, 6 women actually, in a pitch in Seed Hill. And then roll on to now, including the pandemic. We're probably sitting with a Women and Girls Academy now of around 120 women and girls players. So including has been effectively mothballed for 18 months during the pandemic.
I'm guessing that's been quite a steep hill to climb back up again once things started to open up.
Well, last season was particularly difficult because it was coming back to COVID, and I think it was very hard for women's sport. I don't even think that's about women's football, but I think women's sport, I think what the pandemic did really highlight is how little regard is actually given to women's sport, if I'm being a wee bit brutally honest here. When we saw the amount of women's sport that get mothballed and we're not playing. I think even in women's football, we had 16 teams were allowed to play through the pandemic compared to 300 men's teams. So it's the challenge that we'll always have. And even people who are listening to this podcast, some folk will not even have known that we've had a women's team, or that we've got women and girls, or we've got the entire academy that we have. And that's just the nature of where we are, and we're quite realistic about it. And also when I met the club in the beginning, it was about being realistic about what St Mirren could do as well, and how we could grow it and give it a good foundation that it exists whether the club is in a good position or not. Because historically, because I have been around football a long time, I have watched over the years where women's football gets an investment from the men's team, but then the men's team gets relegated. Now, it's not the men's team that then are penalised for that. It's actually the women and girls programme that gets cut. So we've seen that at clubs like Notts County, and where I think overnight a whole entire women's team was made unemployed because the men's team got relegated. So I'm very conscious of the fact that we have to make sure that the balance is there for the financial for the Women and Girls Academy to exist. because although we'd all love it, and I would love it if St Mirren had some of the budgets of like Real Madrid or Barcelona, but unfortunately we're in Scotland and we don't have that type of budget. But yeah, it's just so I've been really recognising that as we're building the Women and Girls Academy, the financial stability and what we have off the pitch has to exist no matter what's really happening at the club as well, if that makes sense. So that we're still in existence no matter what's happening.
And with your role covering both the first team but also the academy, the potential there, does that create the possibility of starting to build up? Did you see a through line from every age group right through to what you're doing the first team?
So at the moment, we're very fortunate. I mean, the dedication that we have, because for the Women and Girls Academy, like everybody is volunteers. There's no paid staff in our part of the club. And so the people we've got are immensely dedicated to it. So Richard and Kirsty, who really look after the academy, we've got from under 9s, under 11s, under 14s, under 16s is where we're at. So, and we've got some really talented at the under 16s. So the under 16s won the League Cup just about 6 weeks ago. They also won their league last year. So it's really good that we're having to kind of take time to progress that up, so that they then become our national performance under 18s, and then that gives a real pathway up into the women's team. And actually last year, during the pandemic, we actually brought 4 academy players up to help us basically for the women's team to survive. We had to rebuild the team 3 times actually during the last season, because all of our players are paid, are workers, the work. So a lot of them had real challenges, which was also an impact of the pandemic, that actually women in terms of workplace were quite adversely affected by the pandemic as well. So a lot of them had to make choices of having to change jobs and where to go and how to move. And unfortunately, when you're not getting paid for football, even though you do train at quite a high level and we do perform at quite a high level, at the end of the day, they have to pay their bills, and that's the reality. So, and because we don't pay players, so I need to really be really creative in how and where I get my players from and how we develop it.
I think that's a key difference, which I think we'd had a quick chat before this, and we'd mentioned that it's a totally different job from what people that normally listen to our podcasts are thinking about what Stephen Robinson does on the men's side, where you've got 6 weeks in the summer where you can tie down players from whatever source you're looking at onto 2 or 3 year contracts, and that they'll be here for that period of time, and there's very little that's likely to come in and interrupt that. Whereas, as you were saying, three rebuilds in the space of a season, and having to be creative to see where the players to fill out that squad are coming from. It's a totally different challenge.
Yeah, I mean, this year we've done well over pre-season. I mean, we're sitting in July, and I probably still have to recruit a goalkeeper, an additional goalkeeper. But on the whole of that, we're probably quite a settled squad, and we're probably quite ahead of the game this year. But we've worked hard. So, like for example, Layla Phillip, who is one of our fullbacks. She's 19. She's currently studying prosthetics at Glasgow University. But normally she's originally from Inverness, so normally she would go way back up to Inverness after when uni's not on, because she's no accommodation. So this year we worked really hard to find her a job down here and also find her somewhere to stay. So we've managed to keep her down over the season. So in pre-season, so instead of me getting her back, because she's very talented, and the turn of pace and things like that she's got on her for at the back for us will be phenomenal for us next season and really crucial. But I'd have lost her for like effectively 6 weeks, but I've managed to be able to keep her down here in training. She came to Germany, so she's not then turning up at the end of September, and we're having to do a complete pre-season with her. So it's small things like that matter, that we have to work and be, as I said, really creative about how we keep people, how we engage players. But what I would say is one of the things is we're really quite big on is try to have yeah, you might not get paid, but that doesn't mean to say you can't have the professionalism and you can't have the professional attitude, which is something we're always pushing at the club in terms of what we're doing. So, for example, getting sponsored by Digby Brown, that puts us in a different platform because they are in to be doing the strip launches and to be seen as being more equal, if that makes sense. Does make a difference as to then how we can generate income and funds and sponsorship. The Germany trip, I think, social media wise, I think we did over 25,000 reach just being in Germany. So you have to want to really push where you're going and what you're doing.
Obviously, you kind of touched on it earlier, obviously saying you started off, you were obviously 6 bodies down at Seat Hill. Obviously, you've been there right from the very start. What's the differences in the kind of setup you have now compared to what you had kind of when you started? Obviously, I think I coached a boys club team. I think you trained up at Castlehead on a Thursday night. You trained in the end, third of the pitch when we were there. So what's the sort of kind of the main differences for then and now?
So for every year, what I have to look at is what marginal gains can I make every year. So the big chat when we started out, we were actually training across 5 venues. We were the club. So people will say, "Oh, why can't you just fit in at Ralston?" So I kind of quite like the podcast as well because it's probably given us an opportunity to explain sometimes why people go, "Well, how can the club not just take these and just stick these in at Ralston?" If you come in, it's already fully booked. So what you have to also understand is, as well as I want the Women and Girls Academy to be recognised of what it brings to a club, not what it takes away from a club. And sometimes you have to educate people as well on you're not there to take resources away, you're actually wanting to add. So when we had sat and had discussions about Ralston, we'd have been trying to shoehorn in, like they did sit down, we tried to have a look at it, but we'd be getting shoehorned into places and it just becomes really disruptive. So what I really wanted to do long term is to find our own venue that then also takes the brand of the club much further across Renfrewshire. So in our first season, we played across 5 venues. The second year, we got it down to playing across 3 venues. And then more recently, we now train and play all of our matches at Moss Edge Village, which is in Linwood. And that's been a phenomenal facility for us there. I mean, that's a £2.5 million build by a group of women. So, and that's been good for us as well because it's an all-female board. And I'm not saying that, but they understand the hardships that we have. And they've been immensely supportive. So Kirsty and Sharnan there and the board there have been absolutely amazing for us. And it's but what it's done is given us a single venue. It gives us a place that we can actually really start to build a base from. But also what it does is that means then I look at that and go, well, every penny that we pay in there to use the facilities and increase and to grow what we've got over there helps keep something alive in the community that the local community need as well. So it means that St Mirren are actually in the community. So when we're over at Linwood, when we train alongside the other clubs, we're very tangible for the community to come and see and for kids to come and see. And ultimately, I think a lot of times women's football is excellent for getting kind of almost future-proofing your club because we can touch bases that the guys' team or the men's party team can't touch because we're much more women's football's obviously very family friendly. If you'd been down and seen their Euros, I mean, we don't even do segregation at games. Do you know what I mean? That's how integrated we are. I mean, if you, like I was down at the women's Euros and I'm sitting next to people who are supporting, do you know what I mean? So one of the first games I was down doing Northern Ireland and Norway, I think, and so I'm sitting next to people who are Norwegian and we're down supporting Northern Ireland because obviously we're a UK club and a UK country, but so it's that type of thing. That's what women's football gives you. So sitting at Linwood and the ability and the scope there, I mean, if nobody's went over to see Linwood, you need to go visit. The cafe is phenomenal, like real quality, like stuff over there, and then it's got a 60-seater theatre. So that allows us to really look at how we can do match analysis with players and how we can actually start to increase the demands that we can make on them. So, I mean, if nobody's ever visited, you need to go, one, just for the food, but also two, it's a phenomenal facility. I mean, it's absolutely transformed Lindwood as well. And that's what you want to do. You want to be part of stuff that makes a difference for people in the community. And for St Mirren then, now we're sitting where the men and boys academies up at Ralston, if we can get the women and girls academy all based at Linwood, then we're across it. And then the club itself, the actual stadium's in the centre in the heart of it. So it just means our reach in the community is huge. And I think that's important for us. I think it's important for the club. And I think it's important that we play a real big part in it.
I think what you said there about it being tangible is just such an important thing. It's getting out into the community and showing people that there's a women's team, but there's also the girls' teams, and there's a possibility for girls who want to play football and are from Paisley to play football for Paisley. It's a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep your players local. I mean, St Mirren historically, produced some amazing talent. And we want to do the same in the women and girls side, and we're good as well because now all of our girls academy now plays in one location as well. So which is at Renfrew Leisure Centre. So we've really gone from being split all over the place at all different times to effectively having two venues, and then we hope to make that into one venue. But it's all small marginal gains all the time. But there's some amazingly talented players, like, and even at the level that we're at just now, which is obviously tier 4 within Scottish women's football, but within Scottish football, some of the players I get to work daily is just their talent is unbelievable. It's just they don't get the recognition because that's where women's football is. But Maxine Fury, who obviously is one of our strikers, we go across to Germany and she wins top goal scorer at a 12-team tournament. We've got talented players. Sometimes it's just not getting the recognition, and because you're actually battling all the noise all the time out there. Because if you look at most mainstream newspapers, although we as a club do immensely well with Paisley Daily Express, because we get a back page every week and they're always looking for a story. So we've worked hard off the pitch to create that, and that requires us to come up with things that people will want to know. So a lot of people have seen there's a lot of stories going out about the women players just now, just their backgrounds and who they are, and because people want to know that, they want to know who people are. And I'm very fortunate. At the moment we laugh, but at the moment in my team, in the women's team, I've got a doctor, a dentist, a scientist, a prison officer, do you know what I mean? Somebody that's just passed law. Layla's doing prosthetics at the uni. Do you know what I mean? Physio, civil engineer. It's immensely, like, these women are really hold their own every single day, and they're very clever and talented, and it's just that sometimes people don't see that. But it then means that, yes, our training week, my week is completely different from what the guys will do. So before we're even on the pitch, yesterday I spent all day doing one-to-ones with the players, but that's like a full day for me. But I'm still having to then catch up and work at other times.
Pretty full on. It's 24/7 being involved in football at any level. Aye,
yeah,
it's a lot to do.
I don't think a lot of people know, but we obviously are subject to club licensing. So actually, I need to do 20 hours a week, paid or unpaid. So I must do 20 hours a week for the club and for the team. And that's not necessarily just all coaching, but so I do a lot in terms of how we're developing it. What brand do we really want to have off the pitch, and really want to look after St Mirren's brand, because they've got an amazing family brand. Look after that, and like how are we getting ourselves out there, who are we connecting to, what else can I get. So like today I was having a conversation with a sports scientist, so I'm hoping that she'll come and help us out for the season. So, but it's in a volunteer capacity, so I've got to be really good at selling the club. Have a bit of the gift of the gab.
You've got to be a good salesperson. You've got to give them a sales pitch.
And that is my job. I mean, yes, I coach, but ultimately I see myself, and it's quite funny when people talk about football and we get quite stressed about it all, but ultimately my job is really, I'm a dream maker. I mean, every day I get to turn up and I mean, I don't know if you saw the one with Kira McIntyre, but she's an absolute staunch St Mirren fan, like since she's been about 7, and we had her involved with the strip launch. But you can't buy that. Like, for her to experience that, we told her it'd be good if she'd smiled in the photograph. She was taking it really serious.
Had she scored against Morton just before?
And she scored. So she went. She went and done her strip launch, and then came up with the friendly against Morton, and she scored. So, but that is what you do. I mean, that is what St Mirren Football Club do. Whether you're a player, a supporter, you actually have the ability to be a dream maker for people. So I think I'm in a very privileged position to do what I do, and to have the contact that we have, and to watch the development of the team, and where we're going and how we're getting there. And actually sometimes I wish, like sometimes I look when I come into the club, and then you go through and you see the history of everything. I think if the supporters in terms of the women's team actually can get the chance, so supporters that we have now can actually get the chance to be involved like the founders of St Mirren were back in like 1877. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and that doesn't come along very often.
Yeah.
So sometimes I kind of want to say, folk, why would you not want to get involved and be part of the legacy? And then that's what I said with the players. So the conversation I was having yesterday is just, why don't you become a legend? I don't know how many people that like to have those opportunities. So the group of players that I have now, where we are, have the real chance to actually catapult us up into the next level, and that next level of competition. And so you have to want to get up and want that every day. I mean, last year we played Falkirk with 9 players because I was giving up. So, and even our trip to Germany, I mean, the fiasco with flights, and like, because all the drama that was happening with flights and all that, and then I just went to club and said, can I use the bus? And then we just drove to Germany. But people say you must be totally off your head. No, because that's what changes things. Do you know what I mean? If you want to do it, you need to do it. If you want to make it happen, make it happen.
100%.
So,
you're not gonna get anywhere just kind of sitting in your arse doing nothing. You touched on it before. Obviously, the kind of move into the Scottish Women's League One. Obviously, you were in the South Division previously. Is this a welcome move? Obviously, similar direct chance to kind of move upwards and play a different variation of teams we've been used to playing. Obviously, playing at a higher level as well, I presume.
I think it's actually it's restructuring that's happened in the league with the SPL 1 and 2 going to the SPFL. Then the Championship and the First Division have then become the top level within women's football. So, and it has changed the exposure that we're getting, and it has changed in terms of the role models that you then become for Scottish women's football. So it is good to be competitive. We're always looking to be competitive. I think this season, the league, both ourselves and at the Championship, which is just above us, I'll be massively competitive. I don't think there's going to be big score lines. I think every game you're going to have to really dig it out and work hard and push yourself. And it's really, and the teams that are going to, for us to look to get promoted, we're going to have that real daily and weekly grind of turning up and that real commitment to want to win. And I think that's one of the big things is, obviously over the last few years it's been really challenging for us, and particularly last year we had some real tough results, but people weren't really seeing what's happening in the background. So when you've got players that have had COVID, and I mean, I think at one point I had 9 players with COVID through the team 3 times, and that takes a toll, because when you take that, you just can't turn up and then train again. And it's just, and to have that mentality to keep going. So it's easy to lose, actually. It's actually harder to win, and to win consistently week in, week out, because the pressure's on you, the expectations grow. And I think that's some of the stuff that we've been working with the players with, and we'll need to work with the players with a wee bit on. Like, it's okay, it's all good when it's all nice and fun and everybody's, but when winning comes into it, then everybody's mentality changes. And you still have to want to enjoy football. That's my philosophy, is that it doesn't matter what level you're at, only do it if you enjoy it. Even if you're at top level, you have to enjoy what you do, or you'll never stick it.
Totally. I think it's exactly what you said. I think more so than maybe on the men's side of the game, it takes a level of determination and commitment, and the first step to be able to put that in is to really want to do it. And you weren't lying when you called yourself a salesperson with selling the dream of being a legend and everything else. If that's not enough to get you motivated, then I don't know what would be.
But you have to. So sometimes you have to. So like the Germany trip for us was, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've had the opportunity to be at all levels, including international level of the women's game. I've been immensely fortunate with that. And so I know what football is like out with this country, right? I know how female players are treated, like particularly like in Europe, and so going to Germany was really important, because because part of my role is to create opportunities to inspire the players, and then once they see it, they can't unsee it. So that's the thing. Like, once people see something, it doesn't matter what they want to do, they can't put it back in the box again. So going to Germany and arriving there and getting the response that we got there from the hosts initially, and then interviewed by German TV. There's people come up asking them for their autographs, want to sign shirts. Saoirse and Fran, they get stopped in the supermarket by a dad and his wee girl wanting photographs with them, and they tour like they've just finished playing about 6 games, and they're saying it's just like I look an absolute mess, and he's like, no, it's really good if I can get a photograph with you. So but they've never experienced that before. So, and then it changes you on what you think you're worth, because that's actually the challenge of women's football and women's sport, is understanding the value that they actually bring to the club. Like, we bring immense value to the club. Sometimes it's just we have to show people what the value is, because you only know what you only know. So the challenge in the men's side is they only know what they only know. So because that's, and sometimes that is, well, we've done it for 100 years and we'll still do it for 100 years. Whereas in the women's side, we are so much more, I would say sometimes have to be much more creative. How you use your budgets, how you achieve things. And so when I look at St Mirren, I think there's things that I can really learn from St Mirren and on the men's side of the game, but there's also so much that the club can learn from us as well. And actually, if we work together, then you can really change what your club has. I mean, women's football is the fastest growing sport in the world. So if you think about, so sometimes I have to be a business person as well, if I'm being really honest. So like, I look at it and go, as a club, why would you not invest in the part that will actually sell, which is actually growing the fastest, and continue to just look at one part and only one bit. And also, as well as, if you're wanting to sell season tickets, then actually many women are working now and they have their own money. So, and they hold the purse strings. So you want them to be buying the stuff. I know that I want to be controversial, but probably dictate whether or not their husbands get season tickets as well.
No, I think that definitely happens in more than one house.
Aye.
It certainly happens in mine.
I get into trouble for prioritising my season ticket this year. So
But you want to do that. Like, why do we not want to really engage in the part of the economy who actually control the most spending? Do you know what I mean? So I think we've just been sensible and clever about what we do.
Well, it's not turning away from potential fans. It's embracing it. It's growing the club. That's everyone that's had any say at someone for the longest time has always said that their priority is to grow the club, particularly with younger fans, and to make sure that 10, 20 years from now that the fan base is still growing, and you're adding to the fan base as you naturally lose from it. And I don't think we have the luxury of picking and choosing who that is. We should be promoting ourselves to everyone.
Yeah, and I do think that there's a huge growth out there in what we can achieve, and even for ourselves as well. For the women's team, is like we're really good at like introducing kids and families to football, because we're probably really used to having a lot of kids, and we can we're probably a bit more relaxed about things. In terms, I actually remember I'm hoping to work with SMISIS this year and doing a thing called the Buds Brigade. We had just launched it. We just launched it before the pandemic, and I think we had 50 kids turned up to participate in it. And basically, it's like kids who are not interested in football but want to. So we had them meeting and greeting people. We had them recording the game. We had them being ball attendants. We had them like making noises and all that, and being the supporters, like creating that kind of but like being involved in taking pictures and videoing, and because actually sometimes in football we forget that we really still need to appeal to people who still can't play football, if that makes sense. But they could be our administrators or photographers or the stuff, because the reality is football, I mean, what we see on the pitch, the amount of people off the pitch is huge for that 90 minutes, and people sometimes don't see that, the amount of resources that we need to manage off the pitch. It's just as huge as the team itself, and I think that's part of the progress that we're making this year. So, and including, so the women's team probably now have a good, they're probably supported by about at least 8 or 9 all volunteers, but effectively staff for them now, as we grow and try and keep pushing them and demanding more from them to deliver.
One thing that the men's team's really seen the benefit of, I think, for the first time in the last year or so, is the links that they've built with clubs elsewhere. The Birkenhead United in New Zealand, I think, is the club which Alex Grieve came through from, and has gone straight into the first team. I'd done a bit of reading and hadn't previously been aware of the women's team's link with, is it Belfast Celtic?
Belfast Celtic, yeah, we've had links to them.
Is that something that you're keen to expand as well, and to include the women's team in the discussion when we're networking like that?
Yeah, so I do quite a lot in that way. So even for like St Mirren and for a club for St Mirren, if we want to attract some of the best talent in Scotland, what we have to do is to be able to still create a kind of a system for players to go on to be professional players, even if we're not at that stage yet. So the kind of a real philosophy we try and install in the team and the team environment is that I don't really get the players to compete against one another, so I don't compare them to each other. What we look at is what's their strengths and their weaknesses, and then each of us have to try and help them. So I kind of focus really on what they're good at, and then their job is to make them absolutely brilliant at that. But that's the same when we connect to other clubs. So like we did a lot of stuff with Belfast Celtic because we were probably a bit more developed off the pitch than they were, but it gave us a real good, they were so determined when playing against us and stuff. It really changes that. So then what I do is I then start to build up where I can go and look at to bring talent to us. But then also I have to go and look at clubs that I can send our talent to. And so that's some of the stuff that we've been really building, and that was also what part of Germany was. So out of Germany, we've had the 7-a-side tournament. We've now been invited to an 11-a-side tournament. So actually, we've already booked pre-season training next year. Will probably be 10 days, rather than we drive 1,000 miles and then we play a couple of games and then we drive back. So, but I think it's then kind of linked to some clubs down south. And then the other thing I've got booked at Moss Edge for next year is an international tournament that we're going to hold, and I want to make that really around the kind of I like to look at what brand of football we play, but also what brand do we have off the pitch, because that's just as important. So we're currently looking at, I've always been a big supporter of fair trade, and the women's game's always been quite supportive of, like, and I don't know if a lot of people know, but the SWF won't accept, we have an agreement that we don't take any money from any alcohol, tobacco or gambling. And that does limit us. So it's like almost like, yes, that would be the easy money, but actually it's what you're representing. So one of the things I really want to look at was fair trade, and we'd worked a wee bit with the council before. The pandemic caused a lot of problems for us, but we'd started that off. So I'd quite like to look at where the tournament is already booked. It'll be held at Moss Edge, but then can I bring 4 teams to us from and grow the brand of St Mirren? So I'm currently in discussions with a team in Canada. Belfast Celtic are coming. We'll probably look at maybe getting somebody from Europe and then maybe another team from England. But I think that then brings people to Paisley, and then the town of Paisley, and also as well as like places like Linwood and Paisley itself. I mean, the history that we have in the area is phenomenal. And I think that's probably, we love the kit this season because it's around the Paisley pattern. And I think I'll be struggling, like, we'll definitely not be letting the players take them tops away this year, because they're absolutely over the moon with them. But I think it's because you really feel part of the town. Do you know what I mean? And that connection. So I thought that was really good this year in terms of the strips. So we want to bring people to the area as well, and to grow that, the kind of a tourism, and have people coming back. And then how to develop the links with the players. I mean, we already have Emma Becca's Canadian, so she's a civil engineer working over here, and has played at a good level in Canada. So for the players to have her, and so her mentality is completely different. She's very positive, very like excitable, and is it probably the best way I can describe it? But it's good for Scottish players, because sometimes we are a bit like this misery hunters, but we're quite miserable at times. Like sometimes you have to see, like, we can smile and we can get excited about things. Like, I mean, our catchphrase is like, "How's things?" Like, it's all right. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
And so sometimes I need to look at that and go, actually, players bring something to you much more. So her like enthusiasm and like real excitable energy sometimes is unbelievable.
A good thing for the squad as well, because the kind of typical Scottish attitude when it comes to football is the kind of always the hard luck story, the kind of the nearly men. So it's good to have something different, a bit of a different culture.
We've already got, I mean, Gemma Dixon, who's she's Irish, so and she's obviously over here working and stuff, but and it is having that, it is good to have that background, everybody's different characteristics that they bring, and it's really building that. And I think this season in particular for the starting is probably the closest we've been as a squad. I think that's come a combination, one of how we had to manage last year, in terms of like that daily and weekly grind when people are just down on you because you are struggling to be where we are. And I think even when I was having conversations with players yesterday, that it is a wee bit of a pinching moment for them, because they're like, this time last year we thought we were really struggling, and the season was so tough mentally and physically for us. And then this year we're like that. We've been to Germany, and do you know what I mean? And we're excited about the season starting, and I think we'll compete really well. It's going to be a tough season. We've got 29 league games to play, and then we've got the League Cup and the Scottish Cup. So if you have a run in them, you're talking about 35 plus games. So it will be a real squad game this year. And I think what's been really good is we've managed to recruit some older players, which I think we really needed. With that bit of dig in them as well, you really get the younger players to understand the importance of winning. Because a lot of times I have conversations, I think, sometimes you think, oh, I've got all the time in the world to play. But actually, if you think about your playing career, it's just really a number of games. So what we do with the players is we get them to look at how many games they've got left really in their career. So the reality is, for some of my players this year, they've got maybe 20 games left. And it changes your mentality of what you're doing. And also trying to create that mentality. It's not really how many games or how many times you start a game, it's how many minutes you spend on the pitch. And on that minutes that you spend on the pitch, how productive are you in those minutes? Which is what we've been working a lot with them for going into the season. When you work with a much larger squad and we've got more games, it's actually saying it's not about who's starting, who's not. And I'm not a great fan of substitutes, because like that kind of a terminology, it's almost that you're lesser than the starting 11. And in Scotland, we're obsessed that you have to be in the starting 11. Whereas actually, I would rather have a striker that can come on for 20 minutes and score me 2 goals than somebody that spends 90 minutes on it and I don't get a goal out them. And it's getting them. So this year, we're really focusing on how many minutes are you getting and what you're doing in that time that you're on the pitch. What is your impact that you make, whether you start, whether you come on. That's what we're doing at training. That's what matters. It's your minutes and being really present so that we really get the best out of them. And that's what will create the winning. That's how we'll win, is by really focusing on how we're performing rather than what the results are. Because we've all been there. We've all watched teams where they're winning and you just know they're a ticking time bomb to falling apart. Do you get what I mean? So I'm always trying to plan ahead that we're constantly bringing in players that actually create a real legacy for the club. So we're not a win one year and then you do nothing again. And you see that in most of the SPL clubs. I mean, if you look at the likes of Glasgow City, even like Hibs, even where Celtic and Rangers are now, up there. I mean, these clubs took years to gain success. And so if you really want, and I think the women's game is very, that's where I do have a bit of luxury as a coach, where I can be given a bit more time, because we have to create that long-term legacy, so that you create a much longer-term winning streak for yourself by the fact that you get the time to really work with players. So, yeah.
I think obviously you've kind of touched upon earlier about the kind of help you've had for Smicer. Obviously, what sort of support do they give you, and would you be looking for them to maybe do a kind of wee bit more? Obviously, Digby Brown have got involved as well. They obviously were involved in the kind of kit launch. It was great. It kind of opened up it kind of let a lot of people know that we actually did have a women's team. There's a lot of people who are just kind of very much blinkered with the men's team. That's all that matters, and it was really refreshing to see teams for, obviously there was kids involved in it from the academy, the women's team, the men's senior team. Obviously, do you think Smicer could do a wee bit more to support you and kind of help you grow?
I think part of the challenge, there's 2 challenges we have. One is everybody just thinks, oh, just give us money, and that's always a challenge for us, is financially supporting ourselves. But Smicers have always been supportive. I think sometimes our part is that we need to go and tell people what we need and what we want, and that's part of the education, because the women's game is the women's game. It's not, and I think part of the challenge there is everybody thinks, so I'll get quite regular. We'll get, I think we're playing Stenhousemuir in the friendly and we get beat 2-1, and we're getting some of the fans come on and rip us because we get beat 2-1 by Stenhousemuir. But what people don't know is actually Stenhousemuir women's game plays a much higher level within football than the men's team do. And sometimes they don't get, because they just think, oh, Stenhousemuir men, but actually the women's team are in tier 4 of Scottish football. It's the same as well, Greenock Morton in tier 3 of Scottish football on the women's side. So I think because people don't really know, and I think as time goes on, then yes, I think we kept it quite low key with Smices for a long time because they were obviously wanting to take ownership of the club and have that, and that takes time to bed in. And I think last year they spent a lot of time where that really needed to get kind of a settled in at the club and then make a decision. But whenever we've went and asked for anything, Smices have always supported us. And then last year we made the decision that we'd get them to support our academy, so they actually bought and funded for the whole girls' academy, all with t-shirts and tracksuits, and that's a phenomenal support that we can get. But I do think there's two: one, some people don't actually know what to do for us, and two, we need to teach them what the women's game actually needs. And so that's and that doesn't come quickly. Because actually the part of the challenge for the women's game is that it's really had, like already before even our season started, we were due to release, season started, there's already teams struggling whether or not they could actually compete in the league because financial implications for some of the teams. So, and we're obviously a national league as well. So I think our first home game, fortunately, is at Moss Edge on the 14th of August, but Grampian Ladies is who we're playing, so they're obviously having to do that travel. But if you're some of the clubs that are up north, I mean, they travel every single week. I mean, so the kind of finances that are involved in that is a lot of money. But yeah, every time I've gone and asked them, this is where we need the support, they've always come back and said, no problem. And actually we get quite when I put it out to obviously the members, we get, I mean, it's like 70-80% agreement to support us. So, yeah.
I think speaking to Keith Lasley, he was very positive about finding more that they can. I say they as if it's separate, but it's not. But finding more ways in which the club can embrace the women's team and support it. And I think what you said earlier on is such an important way to look at it. It's not, putting the hand out and asking for, something just so that you to take it. It's about also convincing the club of the value that you bring and what you do and how mutually beneficial it is. Something that we've spoken about quite often and hasn't always been universally popular within the fan base of the men's team is the percentage ownership and the involvement of Kibble within the club and what they do. But just when you're talking about, the initiative where you're getting kids in who maybe don't want to play football, but they want to be involved in the match day experience or in the running in the club or the administration of it, we're partnered with a charity where all they want to do is to give opportunities for people to gain experience and to help build things. And to me, that seems like a real area that could be embraced. You've got people who are just trying to learn life skills, and we've got an organisation which could absolutely benefit from more support and more resources in order to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think we've been very open to that. I mean, that's actually been some of my background as well, whereas I've been involved in that type of employability kind of a programs as well, and I did do a wee bit at Linwood for a wee while there. But I think there's loads of opportunities for us. The challenge for us is that there are so many opportunities that we actually sometimes have to go slow to go fast, if that makes sense. And I like that all the time. So sometimes everybody's like, oh, let's go do all these things. But I mean, Keith and I have agreed to meet once a month, so that we can continue to grow a lot of the stuff and look at where the opportunities are. And even before even Keith came along, Jim Goodwin was always very good with me. Like, if I mean, I remember last year, and I think couldn't get the team to defend at all. They just were not getting it, and I just sent this message, and I went up and had a coffee with Jim, and he gave me, we had about an hour or something like that, and just sat and spoke about ways in which I could change training, and it's stuff like that that actually matters. That's worth more than the advert you get where it used this cost this cost this, but the experience is priceless. So for me, sometimes having that is worth far much more than any money that they could give us. And I think that I really look at the club, and that's what I want to go along and say to them. I don't want to be it's a handout. So even things like when it came to our kit and stuff like that, I've always made sure that the players have had new kit, and that's because historically I'd seen that. And we'll not mention any clubs, but when clubs started to come in, we were watching players getting given second-hand kit from some of the top clubs, and for me, I feel that actually that's not what we're here for. It's about, sometimes it's better waiting and getting it right. Like our senior players in the women's team don't pay anything to play, which I know you'll probably think is quite, well, why wouldn't that be the case? Actually, the reality is that the majority of women's football, apart from probably our top 4 tiers, the tiers that we're in, they all pay to play. They have to pay money every single week to just pay to play, and that's a real challenge actually. But it also changes the dynamics of how you can manage things, because when people pay for things, I can make less demands to a certain degree, because they're saying, well, I pay to be here, so I should have more say in what's happening. Whereas for the women's team, and how, because I can't pay them yet, I have to look at what things can I do with them. So for example, for the women's team, we obviously have the single venue, they get the home and away kit, they get all their match kit, training kit, but it's even small things like this year we will have our training kit laundered and pressed for the players to turn up to training, to put it on, to go out and train and come back. And I know that maybe actually things like that don't exist for the women's teams. We don't have some people who do things for us. Like I have to do everything myself if I want things done. So, and it's those small things like that. We've got a sports therapist, we've got a chaplain. These things matter, because it's about looking after the player as a person as much as it is looking after what they do on the pitch. Because if I really develop the person, then you actually create a better player who's more resilient, more able to manage the demands, be able to push themselves a bit better. And then as we grow, manage, because that's one of the things that women footballers and women's sports athletes have to manage a lot more, is the social media trolling. So this year, you'll see as well, if some of your listeners want to maybe do that as well, as we've created public profiles for other players, so we can really start to grow a brand for them. But then it allows us to engage in, like sponsorship, and be able to tell a bit more, but keep their life quite private. Few up in the SPL, the women's up there, it's been a real challenge where when we're trolled, we're really trolled quite badly and quite vicious. And that's something that we need to manage as well, as you get that kind of a knowledge, because the reality is there is some people out there who still don't think we should be playing football and have that mentality. So
it's I think the refreshing thing that we've seen, and again, I don't think any of us are shy in kind of getting into it when we see things like that shouldn't be going on. And now I would say the balance has probably shifted, that whoever's having the dissenting voice, they're in the minority. It's then the majority of fans that are telling them to button it, basically, that what they're saying is not acceptable, and that we are one club and everything else. I would say it's certainly moving in that direction, but I think women certainly still get the sharper end of that wedge.
Yeah, but I think that's just the nature of life. But I think for us, sometimes is actually seeing that the actual most important people aren't the players. The actual most important people are, like, I mean, for me, when I look at St Mirren, I mean, like, I have been with a lot of different clubs, and I've been around and I've been in different places, and I've actually been very fortunate to have travelled the world in terms of women's football. But like the passion that St Mirren fans have for their club is unique. I mean, I think sometimes they underestimate how much of an influence they actually do have, if that makes sense, and how much they can dramatically change, whether it's the women's team or the men's team or the kids that are out representing St Mirren. I mean, you can make or break how our players feel. You've the opportunity to keep us going when nobody else will. You can invest in us when everybody else doesn't believe in us. And I think sometimes that is about that, and that's where the fans actually get to be able to create that whole we're in this together. And I think that's what I have loved about St Mirren. Like, genuinely, that real warmth that you get from the fans and the supporters of the club.
I think a big motivation for us doing this as well is to try and do what little we can to try and bring a bit more attention to that as well, and to get people through the gate as well. You mentioned your season openers coming up in a few weeks against Grampian Ladies. You said it's at Moss Edge. Are there any restrictions at all as to how many St Mirren fans can get down there and watch that game?
No, they can come along and watch. And that's one of the other developments that we want to do over there is, like, I'm now looking at, for our club licensing, actually for the women, I need to have a stand. So we need to have a stand. So we're currently hoping, so one of the challenges at Moss Edge is they can get and build, so they're looking at new changing rooms and kind of developing a bit more for the actual facility itself. But if I can go and look, so part of my job over the season will be to really go and look at getting money and sourcing money to build a 300-seater stand plus standing area. So we could maybe have up to, could we have up to about 600 or 700 fans there on a week-to-week basis. And that changes that local area as well. And so, yeah, we would really like a lot of support from them. Come along, and it's not going to be like going to the stadium. It's still a bit rough around the edges, but we've got a couple of things. We've got a new wee one that we're hoping to do is called Chuck a Duck. But you need to come and see it if you want to play it. So to raise funds, it's just the way you need to just be clever. But yeah, we're really looking forward to getting a good bit of support. And I know that we did have our first game at the stadium, and I think we just got under 1,000. So I'm hoping that this year we might have a discussion to have a couple of games at the stadium, because I think we could actually generally get a really good attendance. We need to just look at who we're playing and then how it fits in and whether it's doable. But if that would be great, because that's a real good chance for people to come and see. And actually also a good chance and a good opportunity to get maybe people who wouldn't come to St Mirren normally into the stadium and be part of it, and kind of just look at going, well, actually maybe quite like to come here every week, because we want to sell season tickets. You want the whole place jumping, and I really thought that the decision by all of the fans this year to not give the Celtic and Rangers the allocation and to keep it and to just sell more tickets. So I'm now a season ticket holder, myself and my son, so my stepson. So we're hoping to be at as many of the games as possible. And that's the luxury. The guys playing the Saturday, we play on the Sunday. So it means you can go and can do the watching and part of it.
I'll hold my hands up to have been ignorant of that fact until now, that the teams tend to play on separate days. So there's maybe an assumption there that you can't go and see both every weekend, but there shouldn't be any barrier to that.
You can't. The women, we're historically and have always been Sunday football, and that's specifically for that reason. Because it's always, you're looking for how can you expose the sport but try and break through the noise that's there. So yeah, we've always played Sundays. So it's a great day out. It's a great day out for kids and stuff like that to come along.
I've blocked off the 14th. But barring a miracle third case of COVID in the space of a year, I'll be there on the 14th for the game against Grampian, and I'm expecting nothing, no pressure, but I'm expecting 7 or 8 goals. If that's all right.
I tell you, I think most of the players are like that as well. They just want to score all the goals, but the reality is that I'm just happy if we get 3 points every week.
That'll be a novelty as a St Mirren fan, getting to see 3 points. So I'll be right up for that.
All right, you take that. I play football on a Sunday, so hopefully my kick-off times are a bit more generous, means I can get along to a few more games. And if you see us at one team with 3 points, it'll probably make you feel better after probably watching the men's team struggle on the Saturday, like we always tend to do.
Yeah, I think I look at football. It's really, everybody's at their different levels, and I think it's really hard. I do think a lot of times, like as a club, I look at St Mirren and I look at how much, like, that was probably one of the things that I realised is actually because I don't come from Paisley area, so like I come from Lanarkshire, and obviously the big club over there is Motherwell, but how much the clubs play a part in the community, and when I come over, and it's like they really punch well above their weight, considering the size of fan base we have, the number, in terms of that commitment to the club, because unlike even down in England in some of the lower leagues, I mean, they're still turning up. They've got 40,000 people turning up. I think sometimes we're really down on ourselves as a group in Scotland, and that was probably one of the things I really learned when just in women's football, like with the Scotland team, and just some of the things that they achieved, despite not having facilities. And I think that's something that we probably experience every week, that guys don't. Do you know what I mean? So we sometimes are always saying, well, actually, we really look at what do we have and what we're grateful for, and then we're not always focused on what we're missing, because actually getting there, getting playing, getting out there and challenging and winning stuff and getting ourselves out there is actually the biggest achievement that most of us will make, considering everybody works. And I think women, naturally, we have a lot more, we tend to have a lot more responsibilities. So you're not just getting, it's not like, I fancy going to football today. It takes a lot of management and a lot of organisation to get that space and that time to even be at training, because I've got a couple of players who signed this year, they've got children as well. I have stepkids, and also get my nephew as well. So it's not just as simple as going, I'm going to football this week or the day, or we have to, like, it's like precision, honestly. It's like a military operation just to get to training and matches. So and that's just the nature of the difference of it as well, I suppose. But I think I've thoroughly enjoyed this. We've had some tough times, but I've thoroughly enjoyed all the time at St Mirren. And whenever I've went into the club, everybody's been absolutely fantastic. Is there more areas that we can work together? Yeah, but I think we've got to be productive with that, rather than just go, well, give us this, give us that, give us that. Because you need to use the resources you're given really well.
Feels like things are certainly moving in the right direction in that regard. Anyway, we've taken up a lot of your time, Kate, so I'll bring it to a close there.
But one thing I have to mention just before I close, because she'll never let me live it when if I don't get it at the end of this, because see, as soon as this podcast is about, and so like I was saying, that our captain Karen McCabe is an absolute like total geek from Misery Hunters. So
she's got great taste.
She was just like, oh my god, like. So I think she'll think more of me now that I've actually come on here than no matter what I do the rest of the season, I think. But I wouldn't like to go away without at least giving her a wee shout out, and she'll listen to this probably 1,000 times over, amongst all the other podcasts that you've got.
It gets the listener numbers up, so if she wants to listen to it 1,000 times, she can absolutely feel free to batter in.
tell
Oh
our
no,
friends
she
as
was.
well.
I know she was saying that there when the podcast said you'd obviously stopped for the summer. She was going back and listening to all the old ones. So yeah, she's a real staunch supporter. But not staunch supporter. And to be fair, but she's a staunch supporter of your podcast.
always worth giving a shout out to somebody who is happy enough to give up an hour of their week to listen to us talk absolute nonsense. So, aye.
Magic. So
But
you were
listen,
saying
good work in your podcast as well, and seriously, anything we can do to help get it out there.
we're definitely keen to try and increase that connection for us as well. So you were saying about forward planning. Everyone's got 3 weeks. 14th August, Linwood. Come down, see someone cuff Grampian ladies in the season opener. It's been guaranteed.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll be the diplomat and go. Come along and watch us. Hopefully, win 3 points.
Magic.
I would love to see you there. That would be amazing.
Thanks so much for your time, Kate. Really appreciate that.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, bye bye.
Cheers.